Good morning and welcome to Strictly Business. I'm your host, Penny Font. This podcast features conversations with Louisiana's most influential CEOs, entrepreneurs, and community leaders with the goal of providing insights, ideas, and inspiration to help you and your business grow. Strictly Business is brought to you by the East Baton Rouge Parish Library. Without their support, this project would not be possible. Before we begin, here's a brief message from our sponsor.
The East Baton Rouge Parish Library believes that a thriving business community is good for us all. That's why we help entrepreneurs start businesses with tools like Gale Business Builder, keep commerce rolling by providing access to computers, printers, and free Wi-Fi at 14 branch locations. Get a library card. Grow your business at ebrpl.com/business.
Thank you. We want to keep Strictly Business as interactive as possible. So for those joining us live, here's an icebreaker question for you. Submit your vote in the comments and the results will be posted at the end of the webcast. Today's guest has one of the most remarkable entrepreneurial stories this state has produced. He built a food delivery startup from a notebook idea into a $308 million exit, took it public, and then asked himself, what's next? The answer is QiMana, an AI-powered platform designed to do nothing less than transform the odds for entrepreneurs everywhere. Chris Meaux, welcome to Strictly Business. Chris, welcome to Strictly Business.
Thanks, Penny. Happy to be here.
Let's start with some background information. You are a native of Esтерwood, Louisiana, which, as we know, is not exactly Silicon Valley. When did you first know you were wired to build things rather than work for someone else?
Well, it really goes back to Christmas Day when I was about 9 or 10 years old, and we got our first computer, which was a TRS-80. And I remember putting the old 5.5-inch floppy disk in that TRS-80 and thinking, wow, I could actually program and make this computer do things for me. And that was kind of the beginning. I was hooked. And then from there, I met Michael Dell at a personal event in Austin, Texas, when I was in college. And, he had started Dell Computer out of his dorm room, and that was back in the mid 80s. And so I thought, wow, if he can do it, I can do it too. And so I started building computers in my apartment at LSU. And that was really the beginning of my technology career.
Thank you for sharing that. The TRS-80 is certainly a blast from the past.
It is, yeah. The old Radio Shack.
Waiter went from a sketch of an idea to nearly $200 million in revenue and a $308 million exit in about 6 years. When you look back at that journey now, what do you think you got most right and what would you do differently?
Well, I think the first thing that I got right is when I started the company, I didn't start the company to make money or to seek fame or any of those things. I simply started it to solve a problem that my wife and I had every night. And that was how to put dinner on the dinner table. And I would ask my wife what she wants for dinner, and she'd say healthy chicken. And then I would say, well, I'm not cooking. Are you going to cook? And she didn't want to cook. And so pizza and Chinese were the only thing you could get delivery. And we just thought, what if you could just get anything delivered? And that was kind of the seed behind the idea for Waiter.
Those are the best companies.
Right.
You stepped away from Waiter after the acquisition, of course. A lot of founders seem to struggle with that transition. What was that period like for you, and how did it shape what came next?
It was a struggle. I mean, obviously, I left maybe not so willingly, but left anyway because the buyers of the company had different ideas of how they wanted to take the company forward than the way than my ideas, and so you leave and you kind of see the company going in a direction that's different than maybe the direction I would have taken it. So early on, it was a difficult transition. It was somewhat muted because not long after that, the whole world fell apart. There was COVID, right? And so that created some unique opportunities for me. It actually was the beginning of what became our next company, Mallard Bay, which is doing really well now. So it got somewhat muted, but I still look back today and think, what if I had stayed on? We built it so quickly and so fast. And I think there was still a lot of opportunity ahead of us. I don't have many regrets. So I don't have any regrets of that because that kind of led me to the things I'm working on today. But it was a difficult transition.
Well, as you said, that experience, the highs, the hard lessons, and the exit really becomes a foundation for what you're building now. So let's get into QiMana.
Mhm.
So the origin story here is interesting. It grew out of a conversation in 2021 between you and Rolf McCollister, who our listeners know well as the founder of this publication.
That's right.
What exactly were you two talking about, and when did you realize that there was a company in that conversation?
I think it actually was 2019 when Rolf and I met for the first time to discuss it. He called me right after I left Waiter, and he's like, "Hey, I'd love to have lunch with you. I've got some thoughts I'd like to go through with you." And at the time, we met at Jubin's for lunch, and he told me what he had in mind for Solomon. And I just didn't see the hook at that point. I didn't see. I saw the challenges. Well, I certainly saw the need, right? Because both he and I get a lot of requests for our time to talk about business with young startup founders, or not, maybe sometimes not so young, but people who are looking for a path to success and they want some guidance along the way. And so I saw that as an opportunity, but I didn't really see how we could make it a business, because there were a lot of challenges with in-person meetings, and of course this was before COVID, right? So the virtual meeting thing hadn't really taken off at that point. But the seed always stayed in my head, and so then fast forward to that conversation we had in 21, and the world had changed at that point, and video conferencing was more ubiquitous, and I thought, okay, now maybe there are some new and interesting ways to do this, but I still didn't see the hook. And it wasn't until Rolf and I, he called me up in, I guess, late 2023 and said, man, I've been working with Stuart Gilly on this alliance deal, and I still think there's a big opportunity for Solomon. And I started thinking at that point, Rolf, there's something new that I think really could be the hook to make this work, and that was AI. And so from that conversation on, my mind was racing, and so was his. And so we were able at that point to put together kind of the pieces that we thought that would really make it interesting.
The statistics on startup failure are sobering. Most businesses don't make it past 5 years. In your experience building and advising companies, what do you believe is the real reason that most startups fail? Is it capital, or is it something deeper?
I think it's fairly simple. Most startups fail. Even the past startups that I had done that failed, and I've had plenty, it was poor execution. And when I say poor execution, what I mean is, most startup founders, especially the ones I even talked to today, they think the value sits in the idea that they have. And they think just because I have a good idea, it's going to be a huge success. And so, they talk about, well, let me protect my idea, and I can't tell you what it is until you sign an NDA and all those things. And they miss the real point. The real point is that the idea is worthless, truly is, unless it's some kind of, novel medical device that's patented or so forth. The idea is worthless. The value is in the entrepreneur's ability to execute and turn that idea into a functioning operational business. And that really is kind of the gist, of what Rolf has always wanted to create with Solomon and what we have now. It's execution is difficult because access to mentorship and people who've done it before, and new ways of executing using new technologies has never really been readily available. And so that execution is what we really try to solve with the Solomon platform by QiMana.
That is such valuable insight. Thank you. So walk us through Solomon. What does a founder or small business owner actually do when they open the app?
Yeah, well, at the heart of what Solomon is about, it's about institutional and individual knowledge. So collecting and capturing that institutional and individual knowledge, and then making it accessible to the people who need to have access to that. So let's take a use case for a business, for example. If I'm a business, I have a tremendous amount of knowledge in that business and the people that we've invested in over time. And most of that knowledge is unwritten. It's still in that those employees' heads. So what Solomon does is it allows those businesses to extract that knowledge and make it available to the I'll call them the apprentices, the folks who are coming up after those experts leave, so that they still have access to that knowledge. That was what Solomon was about. It was about capturing the knowledge that people like Rolf McCollister had over building the business report over 40 years, or my experience building technology businesses over the last 35 years, and then making that information accessible to those who come up after us. So Solomon is really a knowledge management platform that extracts information from the human brain and makes it accessible to others, whether that's organizational knowledge or whether it's individual knowledge. It's all about making it accessible to others.
So the name QiMana is a deliberate blend of Ki representing a founder's internal energy and passion, and Mana representing external influence and impact. So talk to us about how that philosophy actually manifests in the product itself.
Yeah, so picking a name is always the difficult thing, and we wanted a name that kind of reflected what the product does. And the product being called Solomon, the actual platform, is a play on the wisdom of Solomon, the King Solomon, if you will. And so the way it manifests in the product is by capturing and structuring that knowledge in a way. It allows us to then make it accessible to users in whatever channel they need to use that information. So if you think about, technology's equivalent of a textbook, where a textbook, the author basically captures knowledge from all of the research that they've done and stores that knowledge in the form of a textbook, we do the digital equivalent of that. So we capture that knowledge from the human brain. We make it accessible so that we can combine the user's passion for entrepreneurship and the zeal to learn with the experts who have the knowledge and the experience that those entrepreneurs, or even in a company setting, that those new employees that are brought into a company can tap into that expert knowledge and use it in ways that maybe it was never accessible before.
That is so incredibly innovative. There's a lot of AI noise in the market right now, as we all know. So talk to us about what makes Solomon different from simply asking ChatGPT for business advice.
Yeah, that's a great question, Penny, and I get that question often. If you think about ChatGPT and other chat agents and what they are trained on trillions of parameters of information that already existed, either in print or on the internet. What we do with Solomon is we take human knowledge that is not structured, it doesn't exist anywhere in print or on the internet. We extract that knowledge from the human mind, and then we make it accessible to the people who need access to that knowledge, whether it's an entrepreneur looking for expert advice, or if it's a company employee looking for best practices from experts within their own company. We extract and store that knowledge and make it accessible. So it's not a textbook answer per se, it's an experiential answer.
I love that. So as you've described, you're essentially bottling the wisdom of experienced entrepreneurs and making it accessible at scale. So that leads to an interesting question about the people on the other side of Solomon, what you call the luminaries. You've described luminaries as the experts on the platform, successful entrepreneurs who contribute their knowledge and can be booked for real conversations as well. So talk to us about how you recruit them and what convinces a busy, accomplished person to participate.
Yeah, well, since we rolled this out just I think right at a year ago now, we've kind of changed that a little bit.
Okay.
And what we're focused on more now, or we're focused on the organizations where those experts work today, and allowing those organizations to use Solomon as a tool to extract knowledge from the experts within their organization. And then once we allow organizations to do that, then those organizations can now make those experts available to the public on Solomon if they so choose. So then that those experts can become thought leaders in their field on the Solomon platform. So it's a little bit different, a little bit different from the standpoint of where our focus lies today on capturing that knowledge. but the use case is still very much the same.
So, as we've kind of been talking about, there's a real tension in AI powered mentorship, the risk of generic, sterile advice that you get from a chat GPT versus the kind of hard won, specific wisdom you can only get from somebody who's actually been through it. So, talk to us about how Solomon navigates that.
So the tools that we use to extract the knowledge are kind of part of the secret of capturing experiential knowledge versus just textbook knowledge, right? So, for example, entrepreneurs, especially the ones that I work with, seem to learn better by actually hearing a story about how something unfolded while we were building Waiter than just saying, well, step one, step two, step three is what you need to do. And so, the tools that we offer to capture that knowledge encourage those experts to tell stories, give their perspective from a story. And I think this was captured. I went to an event by the Edward Lowe Foundation, and the facilitator said one thing that I think encompasses all of this, and that is, don't give entrepreneurs advice, share experiences, right? Because if you give advice, it's almost as you're saying, you don't know what you're doing, so take my advice and do it this way. That no one wants to hear that, right? So what we do at Solomon is we capture experiences, and then we allow those experiences to be accessed using AI technology. And that is much more useful than me just saying, well, this is how you have to do it.
That is much more meaningful, definitely. A year ago, you closed a $1 million pre-seed round backed by several Louisiana investors. What does it tell you about Louisiana's investment community that this kind of deal got done here?
Yeah, so it's not that different, now compared to a year ago as far as access to capital in Louisiana, but it is vastly different than in 2013 when I started Waiter, where there was no structured capital ecosystem in the state at all. And so, it's a much better system now. And how technology companies are built today versus what they were just 6 months ago is vastly different, right? So I think those things coming together, how we use AI, how we use AI to do work, not just to facilitate our job, but actually do work, is different. And then how investors finance those new startups today, and what questions they have to ask. And me as an investor, even I have to ask very different questions today than I did just a few months ago. But if the ecosystem didn't exist in the way that it does today, then there would be much less opportunity. In fact, I think we are moving into an era where you will see in the state of Louisiana a vast amount of new startups that start up because the capital system exists, the mentorship and expert advice or expert experiential sharing system exists on platforms like Solomon and even others. And you have a much the audience of experts in the state of Louisiana today is much more willing to give of themselves to help other entrepreneurs than they have ever been. So the whole ecosystem working together is working better today than it was in 2013.
So let's continue talking about that ecosystem and how you described that it's changed, and you're certainly a part of that as well. What do you think it would take for this state to truly become a top tier startup hub?
Well, I think we're well on the way to becoming that. If you look, especially if you look at advancements in energy technology and energy infrastructure and the financing that's behind those types of things, organizations like Fuel, LA.io, the things that they're investing in, the organized capital like Boot 64, Innovation Catalyst, 1834 Ventures. I mean, there's just a vast array of different ecosystem partners now to take these ideas and invest in them. And even the things that we're doing with Solomon to make access to mentorship and knowledge more accessible. All of these things are important. But the number one thing that is going to drive an explosion of entrepreneurial growth in the state of Louisiana is the thing that I think people are most fearful of. People are fearful of AI taking jobs. And what is actually going to happen is AI is going to create opportunities for entrepreneurs for people who may not have thought their career was going to be entrepreneurship to now jump into entrepreneurship and build something on their own, which is then going to allow them to employ people who may or may not have lost their jobs. Maybe they're just looking for a better opportunity. Yeah. So it's going to allow them to hire the people that they need. So look for an explosion of startups in the state of Louisiana in the coming months and years ahead.
That's a really great perspective and also very exciting. You're personally involved with the LSU computer science community, the Silicon Bayou 100, and Louisiana's Growth Network, among others. How important is that kind of civic involvement to building a durable tech economy? And do you see enough founders giving back in that way?
Yeah, I mean, that's been really interesting. I like to put it this way, Penny. Those of us who have had some success in life and in business, we like to talk about it, right? So, and we should, because it helps the next generation. So I think there is a large part of the business community that enjoys giving back. There certainly could be more, and I think that's what we're trying to accomplish with Solomon, both from an organization standpoint and individual experts that are out there, is trying to bring them into the ecosystem to give back. And so I enjoy doing it. I think Rolf enjoys doing it, and that's why he and I started this company. But yes, I think there's more and more every day. I've gotten to know a lot of the successful founders in the state of Louisiana. And it seems like they're always willing to give back, but we could always have more.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's zoom back to QiMana specifically and talk about where all this is headed, because the vision here is very ambitious. You've said that if QiMana can move the needle even 1 or 2% on startup success rates, it would have a measurable economic impact on communities. How do you actually measure that, and what does success look like for QiMana in, say, 5 years?
Yeah, the difficulty is measuring it. But you could see signs of it anecdotally over time, right? I've seen users that we've already had that use part of our platform or that have been exposed to experts, either through the platform or through the events that we've done, the workshops, the launch event, things like that, that have kind of taken that expert knowledge they've been able to tap into and propelled their existing startups to a next level in their journey to success. But it's going to be difficult to measure it over time. I think you'll see it in the macroeconomics over time, the number of new businesses that are started, how many of them still exist after 5 years, what was their path to, along their journey to success. I mean, I'm involved in other businesses either as an advisor or a co-founder or as an investor where we can look at those things. But I think we're encouraging investment organizations accelerators and incubators to use our product, because we can capture all of that knowledge and we can make it somewhat more measurable, right? Because if they're coming to our platform to seek the experts or to capture knowledge or to do work, then we're capturing that and we can give insights on that. Now, we're not there today. We're still very small and we have to grow into that. But there are going to be a lot of different ways. I think AI is going to be a big enabler in measuring things in the future as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So Solomon launched with a focus kind of on Louisiana entrepreneurs, but the market that you're describing, a growth opportunity that you're describing, is obviously much larger. Can you give us a little bit of a peek into your geographic and market expansion playbook?
Yeah, I mean, right now we're still focused on Louisiana, and it's very much similar to the playbook we used at Waiter. And we had a saying at Waiter: if we could do this and make it work in Lake Charles, we can do it anywhere. And I think that's kind of the mindset we have today with Solomon is if we can make this work for Louisiana, we can make it work anywhere. So we're hyper focused on Louisiana right now. We're hyper focused on the expert knowledge that we have here and how we capture that knowledge and make it accessible to Louisiana entrepreneurs or Louisiana employees. And if we are successful in doing that, then the world is our, as the saying goes, the world is our oyster. Yeah, we could do it all over the world, but right now we just have to make it work here in Louisiana for Louisiana experts, Louisiana entrepreneurs, and Louisiana businesses.
Absolutely. So you're essentially building a network that gets more valuable the more luminaries and innovators join it. What's Can you tell us about your strategy for sort of hitting critical mass?
Yeah, I think of it a little bit differently than that. Not just a network of experts. I think of it more so as a knowledge base of experience, and that's a big distinction because yes, we do give you face-to-face access to experts if they choose to use that part of our platform. But more than anything, we give you infinite access to their knowledge, even after they may be gone. So it becomes a permanent part of the experiential knowledge record, if you will, of that network of experts. So access to knowledge, and that's why we call it access to knowledge versus access to experts, right? Because the knowledge is what's important. That's where wisdom comes from.
Makes a lot of sense. So before we wrap up, I want to get philosophical for a moment because our audience is full of people in the middle of their own founder journeys, and they're going to want to hear more about what you've learned. So you've been recognized by Ernst& Young as Gulf Coast Entrepreneur of the Year. You've sat across from investors. You've navigated a public company. What's the one thing about building a business that no award, no pitch deck, and no business school class fully prepares you for?
Yeah, I think the number one reward that I've seen, even building Waiter, now with Mallard Bay, and it's starting to happen with QiMana, is when you see someone using your product and they look you in the eye and say, "It changed my life." That's the reward. Like that truly is the reward. And I'll just give you one example from the Waiter days because I think it encapsulates that perfectly. We had a woman in the Waiter days, I'll call her Miss Peggy, who was homebound, and she ate pizza and Chinese every day because it was the only two things that she could get delivered. She contacted us wanting to know how she could get Waiter on her flip phone, back in the flip phone days still. And we said, well, Miss Peggy, you can't use Waiter on a flip phone, but we have an old phone here that we'd like to bring you so you could use it. And when we walked into her apartment on the second floor, now she's wheelchair bound and she's on the second floor and no elevator. That's why she couldn't get out. There were 40 Domino's pizza boxes stacked on her table. And we took that old phone, we installed Waiter on that old phone, and 2 weeks later she called us and said, and I forget the salad place in Lake Charles that she was using. She said, "I had salad 6 days in a row. Thank you, thank you, thank you." And that was and literally we changed her life. And we
Absolutely.
saw that story over and over again. We see it now with Mallard Bay and how we change these business owners who were struggling outfitter or charter fishing businesses, and we help them turn their business around. And I hope we see the same thing at QiMana. I think the early signs are we will, but those are the rewards that are more valuable than any of the others.
Absolutely. That's such a cool story. A lot of founders listening to this are at the exact stage QiMana is designed to help, early, uncertain, but convinced they're onto something. What's the most important thing you would tell them right now?
Um, Number one, get started, because I find that entrepreneurs, especially if they have an engineering mindset, but even non-technical entrepreneurs are the same way. They want things to be perfect before they release it or before they put it out into the wild, and that's not always just related to software, but even physical products. People think that way, but if you don't put it out there and get started, like our Solomon platform is far from perfect right now. Matter of fact, probably still got a lot of bugs, but we put it out there. We're getting feedback. People are using it. And so get started. That's the number one piece of advice. And then persevere, because you're going to run into a lot of obstacles. You're going to hit roadblocks everywhere you turn. And so this goes back to what we were talking about earlier about execution, right? Good execution is better than no execution, right? Maybe it's not perfect, but you have to start, and then you have to get through you have to persevere through the obstacles. And that's what leads to great execution in the long run, right? So get started and be sure that you have the mindset to persevere.
That's great advice for life in general.
It is, especially in business.
Yes. Chris, last question. QiMana has a phrase we love, napkin to NASDAQ. So if someone handed you a napkin right now, what would you write on it?
I would just simply put, you can do it.
Thank you so much. This has been a great conversation, very enlightening. We appreciate your time.
Well, it's been great. Thanks for having me.
Chris Meaux, founder and CEO of QiMana. This has been a terrific conversation. For anyone who wants to connect with Solomon or learn more about the platform, head to QiMana.ai. Chris, thank you so much for joining us on Strictly Business.